All right, the time is 7 p.m. We'll call this meeting in order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pulaski.
Here.
Trustee Domke.
Here.
Forsyth. Here. Trustee Lanisa. Here. Trustee Burkowski.
Here.
Trustee Trejo.
Here.
Trustee Della Penna is absent.
And we have a quorum. We'll continue on to presentation of the prepared agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as is?
So moved. Again.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? That motion carries. We'll continue on to Village Board public comment. Anyone wish to provide a comment on a topic or an agenda item may address the Village Board in person during the public comment and public hearing segments of the Village Board agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the board at this time? Let the record show none. We'll continue on to officials and staff reports. Under my report, I have the pleasure of doing the swearing in of our newest firefighter, Evan Smith. So I'll invite our fire department chief, Tim Smeltzer, to the podium.
Yes, thank you for being here tonight. It is my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our newest full-time firefighter, Evan Smith, to the Roselle Fire Department, the Roselle family. It's been a long time coming. This is truly the best part of my job, introducing a new member to one of the greatest professions, helping others in need. Just a few notes about Evan before I have the mayor swear him into his position. Evan graduated from Woodstock North High School in 2020 and instantly had an interest in the fire service through discussions with a family friend. Evan earned a basic operations firefighter certification in June of 2022, earned his fire service vehicle operator in August of 2023, and earned his fire apparatus engineer certification in July of 2023. Earning these certifications early in his career is a true testament for his desire to learn and appreciation for the job. Before applying to the Roselle Fire Department, Evan has been working part-time for the Wonder Lake Fire Protection District and is currently enrolled in paramedic school at McHenry Community College with an expected graduation in July. Please join me in welcoming Evan and his family to the Roselle community, where I'm sure he will enjoy a long and prosperous career in the fire service. If I could please ask the mayor to swear in Evan to his position of full-time firefighter.
You raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Evan Smith,
Having been appointed to the position of firefighter paramedic in the Village of Roselle,
having been appointed to the position of firefighter paramedic in the Village of Roselle,
in the counties of DuPage and Cook,
in the counties of DuPage and Cook,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of firefighter paramedic
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of firefighter paramedic
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Through fire department tradition, Evans asked his father, Rob, to come up and pin his badge. Well, much. We're excited to have Evan on board, and get him started with orientation. I'll welcome to meet back over at the fire station for some light refreshments to celebrate Evan's new position. Thank you.
And I thought I was looking forward to having a paid audience for my State of the Village, but that's okay. So enjoy the refreshments and the party at the fire station though. We'll pause a moment for you all to exit. Continue on with the agenda tonight. Do we have any village trustees that have a report? Trustee Domke.
Well, David, as Mola DeBari has signed papers to become a sister city with Roselle, and Roselle has signed the same papers. It's just a matter now of having the ceremonies to commensurate the agreement, but it's already been approved, and they're on a nice warm area on the beach on the Adriatic. We're not talking about Northern Europe, we're talking about Southern Europe. So Mola DeBari is going to be our sister city, our second sister city officially.
That's fantastic news. Thank you so much. And to all the people that volunteer their time with Sister Cities. I know there's been an explosion of activity and involvement with them, and it's been great to see the fruits of those labors bear some results for us. So thank you so much. Are there any other village trustees that have a report tonight? Seeing none, village clerk, village attorney,
No report.
village administrator. All right, well then that brings us to the state of the village. So we'll give us a second to make sure we've got all the screens turned on and ready to go. All right. Other one though, that's for, we could skip ahead, but you know, it's something to linger on if you want to stick around for that presentation. Jason, do you mind angling the TV by any chance? Yeah, a little bit if you don't mind. All right, there we go. Okay. Well, welcome everyone, and I appreciate the time today to discuss the state of the village and where we've been at and where we're going. This being my fifth, it feels a little bit more natural, and I've been really happy and proud of all the progress we've been able to make as a community together, but it's definitely a team effort. So as I talk to this, I think there's elements at the board and our staff and even the community has all taken ownership to get us to this point. So this is really our state of the village and not so much mine. So if we go on to the first slide, I think we have a lot to celebrate from this past year. And so not only were we awarded for the first time in 2024 Best Town to Live in by the readers of the Daily Herald, but we did a repeat and we got named it twice again. And I think that just speaks to the fact that Roselle no longer is the town that somewhat is known as Roselle what, but we are making a name for ourselves regionally. We've also continued to increase the grants that were awarded to the village for major projects. And I think it's important to note that these projects are things that would not move forward or happen if we did not get the funding and support from other entities. And so we secured this past year $3.2 million for our Irving Park Road pedestrian improvements, as well as for public safety and in preparing our first ADA plan. As we look back at the year in April, we finally got our business licenses moved to online, something that has eluded us in the past. We also got closer to having 2 prospective new sister cities last spring. May became the busiest special event season to date for Roselle as we welcome new events to the Petal Plaza, the brand new Rose Fest officially kicking off, and many, many other events throughout the season. We move on to the next slide. Continuing on, in June, the board took action to finally regulate e-bikes and to really put some teeth into the enforcements and holding parents also accountable. In August, we collected feedback for our comprehensive plan, which we'll be talking about later today. We did another website refresh, including the launch of our first bot to help you find information on our website, Buddy, as pictured there. The Roselle Building Code was updated after a number of debates and whatnot. And the village adopted, after a number of decades, our first ADA transition plan, and also was awarded the construction project of the year for the Rodenberg Road project that we did in tandem with Schaumburg. All in all, that made it a very, very busy and productive year for the board overall. If we would be remiss if we didn't talk about all the special events we held, because we had more events than we've ever had in our village at any point in time. 35 total special events with 12 new French markets, 2 externally organized events on our property. which made up just over 1,700 hours of staff time to put that together, make sure that worked, and not to be forgotten, almost 600 volunteer hours from our VIPs, our REMA, and many other people who help make those events go smoothly and safely for our community. Now, exciting changes that we'll be continuing on is the French Market will be back next year, but we're moving it from every Wednesday to every Thursday in summer. So that way there's more consistency and activity going on. So whether there's a concert happening on the plaza, or you just want to stroll down every Thursday, there'll be something to go on here, and that should hopefully help continue to drive up the attendance that we saw, as well as continue to make that an exciting event for everyone to attend. The other thing that's coming up this year is the President's Cup at Medina Country Club in September. And so that will bring some probably unpleasant things like traffic and whatnot, but it's another opportunity for us to celebrate and market our village to a number of global visitors that will be in the region for that golf tournament. And we're very excited and working with the Medina Country Club to find an opportunity to maximize that for our community. Now, the backbone of everything that we do comes down to our staff. And so this year we had 9 milestone anniversaries from our staff. So in 5 years, Matt in our DES office, Officer Dunn with police, and then we have a number of 10-year veterans with us, Tom in finance and Stephanie as well, Detective Grumka. And we have some 15 and 20-year milestones as well. And so we want to celebrate all of our staff because they really make this look easy for us elected officials, frankly, and they do a lot of things behind the scenes that make it all possible what we do. And as I mentioned earlier, our Public Works has received a number of awards, and I think it's an important thing to celebrate them, especially with our neighboring community mourning the loss of one of their own with a tragic accident, because these Public Works officials put themselves in a lot of danger day in and day out that we take for granted as well. And so we're very, very pleased that our Public Works Wastewater Division was awarded the National Association of Clean Water Agency Peak Performance Award for the 4th time, recognizing their commitment to work, but also the fact that we have a lot of fantastic things that are going on beneath the surface that we may not see each and every day, like those events. Continuing to public safety, as always, they're very busy making sure that we have the best services possible for our community. And so police logged just shy of 5,200 training hours, and our VIPs provided over 1,200 hours of service to our community. Fire, I don't know, we got to look at the numbers here a little bit, but they were very busy last year with over 7,680 training hours. And I know a lot of that was live burns and whatnot. I really appreciate the fact that we've had opportunities to give them live hands-on training. That's super important. We also had 740 EMA volunteer hours as well. And so both departments continue to really drive a whole lot of meaning to our community. And I also want to recognize our officer and firefighter of the year, Detective Stanish, and our firefighter, Brian Koch. So we continue on to our public safety highlights for last year. A number of things changed that may have gone unnoticed to most people. So 911, we're able to roll out text if you can functionality for both Cook and DuPage County residents. It's very important for people, even if you're in a situation that you cannot call and you still need assistance. This provides people a new way to reach an operator and make sure that they get the assistance they need. The other thing that's exciting is we now have Safety Cloud on our newest ambulance. And what that means is it provides alerts of oncoming emergency vehicles to your in-dash cars, your phones, so that way people are aware and they can get out of the way so our emergency response vehicles can move quicker, and that can make the difference in a life or death situation for someone. We also have a new at-risk resident portal. And so this is a way for residents to provide our first responders with additional information so that when they show up to a call, they have important things to make their time on site more productive and safe for both parties. The other thing that was exciting that rolled out in the county was our additional social services that were available. So we have 2 full-time social service workers in our police department, and they received over 618 referrals. And that's incredible for the size of our community. We do have a high school here, but I think it's an important thing that we provide to make sure that we can give people the right service and needs in their moment of crisis. The new tool that we have at our disposal, thanks to DuPage County in the state of Illinois, is the DuPage County Crisis Recovery Center that's open now in Wheaton. This is the first of its kind in the country, and it provides a much needed place for us, for individuals to seek help, but also for us to refer people to when hospitals may be crowded or services may be in a bridging state for people. If we look at our fire department, if we had a bell, I'd ring it right now. We've got another record-breaking year in terms of call volume, and this is a trend that we continue to see over and over again. And we have not changed staffing. We have not changed our equipment services. We just continue to absorb this, and it is something that is creating some stresses in what we are dealing with there. So we responded over 3,645 calls last year. That's a 17% increase in calls per year since 2022. And so we continue to see a big demand there that we are continuing to, in my mind, deliver great services to our community without asking for a whole lot more. And that's something that doesn't necessarily go recognized all the time. They also had a number of exciting things that happened that I know catch social media's attention at times, from the ice rescue at Turner Pond to the live burn at the former Trinity Center. And there's, for the first time that I remember in a long time at least, the helicopter landing zone at Turner Park as well. So exciting things that happened in the fire side. Little bit less exciting, but something we use all the time is our infrastructure. And so last year, we continue to see year over year improvements in what we were able to do in terms of providing to our residents. We resurfaced just shy of 2 miles, which is over a quarter of a mile more than we did the prior year. We replaced over 9,216 feet of curb and 15,000 square feet of sidewalk were replaced around this village. We just replaced, and as the type A person, it drives me nuts that I can't say 200, but 198 trees were planted. We improved 55 storm structures to make sure that stormwater could run off to where it needs to go instead of damaging properties. And we had to attend to over 49 water main breaks. And I know there was a big one today that the crews were out there addressing as well, and we appreciate them. We also installed 380 water meters in properties to either replace deficient ones or brand new ones overall. And so very, very busy year when we look at infrastructure overall. And so when we think about the work that we're doing, it really comes into 2 buckets. And we try to minimize what's reactive in our community, things like water main breaks, as well as responding to requests from citizens, whether it's a tree limb down or other things like that. But the fact of the matter is that's our business, and that's why we exist. The village is here to make sure that when things go wrong, we're there to help repair it as quickly as possible and move forward. Now, what we've been trying to do from a board perspective is to move ourselves to being more proactive, so that way we don't have to be in emergency situations as often and continue to be ahead of the curve when it comes to these things breaking down. And so new things that we've been able to introduce over the past year includes our new frost cameras that we've installed 2 across the village. This allows us to monitor live conditions, which is very handy this time of year, and understand when the ground is starting to get to that freezing point so we can call in crews instead of kind of guessing or kind of taking a pulse locally on the scene. It also allows us to monitor things live that gives us ability to be more responsive and more responsible with our resources like salt, which is very expensive. We've invested in new brining machines. We've replaced a number of aging infrastructure around the town, from lead service lines to older water meters, and we've continued to invest more in our street improvement program as well as our sanitary sewer lining program. A big highlight that we talked about before was our ADA transition plan. And I think when we talk about ADA, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that ADA is more about those that are disabled in terms of they have a visual impairment, they have a physical disability, but it's something that's also helpful as we all age. And that's something that we all, I hope, aspire to, is to get old in our community. And so it's also about making sure that as we get older and it may be harder to get around, we can access the amenities that our town has to offer. And so we went through the process using a consultant that was funded through Cook County to put together, and other agencies, our ADA transition plan to find gaps in the community and infrastructure that we needed to invest in, as well as to monitor things. And I think the beautiful thing of it all was we came back feeling that Roselle was ahead of the curve of a lot of communities, but also set really good examples of how to deal with difficult situations. ADA does not mean that every single sidewalk, every single driveway, every single business is going to be perfectly accessible. It's about how do you take into consideration the built environment we are in, and how can you best address that for people to access. And so we've been able to put together a prioritization list of things that we want to tackle with this. Like anything else, if we had the money, we'd do it tomorrow, but we won't know that that's not the reality. And so we have a multi-year plan, and as funding can be secured through grants and other things, or it could be built into our normal process of infrastructure repair, we'll be addressing these to make sure that we continue to build a community that is accessible and accommodating to all. Now, in the context, and that might be an eye chart, so look at this online maybe for those here in the audience, but we have a number of things that we have identified, and one of those big wins for us was the ability to improve the Irving Park Road corridor for pedestrian and bicycle improvements. And so we have a big chunk of funding that we were able to receive through IDOT that will take a couple of years to let out, but it has allowed us the ability to really look at how do we make our community safer for everyone to travel. One thing that we're continuing to pursue is improved crossing improvements for Roselle Road at Granville, as well as looking at other areas around town like Park and Irving Park Road to complement what we have existing in the core of town. We are looking at other parts of town as well, but this is an area where we've secured substantial funding to help offset our costs, and it's a part of our broader development goals And it signals to the private market the village's interest, but also dedication to making this a very easy to transition or travel through area from that end. Bike routes will also be expanded and be connected to our project with the completion of our bridge that will be coming up soon. If we go to the next one, streets are also important though. So while we want to have things that are walkable and bikeable, we also know that we need to continue to take care of our infrastructure. And so we're starting to realize and see the benefits of the home rule referendum in terms of what we're able to do with infrastructure. And so our street improvement program for next year, I dare say, is probably at its most historic level ever, and we'll be able to resurface and improve 3.29 miles of streets in our village, which is an important thing when you think about last year, we were just shy of getting to 2 miles. And so we're substantially increasing the investment there in parts of our community so we can keep the quality of our life and our built environment high. We have the pedestrian bridge that will be continuing to move forward with some important work happening by the end of this year, with it targeted to be completed in late 27. We're continuing to pursue, and we'll talk more about a quiet zone for downtown, which we hope can start construction in 2028. And we have our largest infrastructure project yet, replacing 100-year-old water mains and sewer mains in the heart of town this upcoming year. So when we look at what does that look like in terms of money and what we're doing, there's a lot of money that we're investing over the next 5 years. And so the first thing that we are investing a lot in, this community has heard a lot about, is the Illinois EPA mandated treatment facility updates. We're going to be, and I can't believe we're going to say this, we'll be done with Boderman at the end of this year. It feels like we've been talking about this for a number of years. And Devlin, we're targeting to be done by 2028. And that totals $83.8 million of investment to make sure that we are releasing less toxic chemicals into our water stream after we treat it. So every time you flush, you use a faucet, we have to treat that water, and we have 2 treatment plants to do that under. And so this will help us make substantial regulatorily required but unfunded things done. The other part is our improvements to Irving Park Road, including the pedestrian bridge, as well as additional bicycle improvements and the design work there. That's a total of $16.5 million. And a lot of that is all being directed through grant funding through the state and other sources. The other thing that we need to invest in is our lead service lines. This is something that's mandated, unfunded, because Roselle does not meet federal requirements to receive aid, and is estimated to be a total of $8.9 million to replace all of our lead service pipes in the village of Roselle. Now, I'm very happy to say that we've been replacing on average about 18 per year. And so we've got, at the end of this upcoming year, 41% of all lead service lines in this village will be replaced. And we're well ahead of schedule, not deferring this and waiting for this to be solved tomorrow to get this off the books as soon as possible. The other thing we're looking at is substantial stormwater management practice changes in this village. We have an estimated $1.9 million of design work that needs to be done for those, and we're continuing to chase down money for that as well, because that is a project like this stuff on Irving Park Road. If we do not receive grant funding, it is difficult for us to budget that with our current funding levels as is. So as we think about what are future things that we are seeking and trying to prioritize, these are things that we are pursuing. We do not have funding secured or started up yet for these. And I think it's important because we always want to look to the future, and I want to be very transparent about it. There's a lot of things we wish we could do in this village, but it all takes money and time. And so these are things that we're continuing to work on, and it's not that we aren't addressing them, it's just that we're trying to find the partnerships to help us fund those. And so a big one that I mentioned earlier is helping our Roselle Road pedestrian improvements to make sure that we can make that whole street ADA compliant, but also improve sidewalk gaps that exist, making it difficult for people to travel, as well as making sure that people can cross safely at Nergy Road as well. We have done some design engineering work on that, and we're looking for potential future grants to complete that, and that's estimated to cost $3.2 million. Another thing that we're looking at is the Lawrence Avenue and Plum Grove Road improvements. This would cost us $3.2 million. And so one thing that we are doing right now is studying the traffic with the completion of Metro 19 apartments to understand if there's any changes to the road that need to be done. But the road is in need of resurfacing, as well as sidewalk and curb improvements to be made along that path. The next one is the Bryn Mawr Avenue pedestrian improvement. This is a great example of we had residents come and speak to a meeting. They gave us a lot of information that we went back and studied and looked at the crosswalks that are there near Lake Park West Campus, as well as the Klaus Recreation Center. And so we've identified and engineered a solution to have more high visibility pedestrian crossings on that street. But that estimated cost is just under $500,000. And so we're working through potential grant funding to make that happen, but continuing to pursue different opportunities in that regard. And then finally, drainage basin improvements to help reduce flooding. So we believe the construction cost of those is $9.4 million in order to build out all three, and we've listed those. They're across the entire village, and we're breaking those down into manageable chunks that we can address and making sure that as funding is available, it's something that we can aggressively pursue with shovel-ready projects that we've put in the effort to make sure that we're well-positioned as a community to compete. Moving on to something a little bit shinier, because we have to put in all that work in infrastructure in order to make development a reality in Roselle. A business, a developer, they don't want to go to a community that doesn't have strong infrastructure. And the work that we've done is signal to the marketplace that this is a good place to do business in, but also it's a reliable place to go because they don't have to worry about potholes. They don't have to worry about deficient water mains. They know the village is proactive in taking care of things, but also future looking in that regard. And so this past year, we had an exciting milestone with the Metro 19 and parking garage officially opening. We also welcomed 52 new businesses to the village. And I think of importance is 7 of those were restaurants. And I know a lot of times it feels like Lake Street doesn't necessarily get all the buzz that it should get, but 10 of those new businesses were on Lake Street, and 14 of those were home-based businesses. So we continue to see diverse new opportunities coming into our community, which is really exciting. The other thing is we do a lot of work to make sure things happen in development, and I think that goes unnoticed a lot of times. We did over 1,849 inspections last year on businesses, on construction projects. We issued over 1,000 building permits across the village. And we also were able to give out a TIF grant to the Roselle Community Food Pantry with their relocation as well. A lot of work goes into making deals happen. And I think it's important to root ourselves in kind of how the village does redevelopment work. And so when we think about that, what does redevelopment, or how does the village guide redevelopment? And what we do, and we'll talk about it later tonight, so this is perfect happenstance situation on our agenda. We use comprehensive planning to make sure that we signal to the private sector by also soliciting the public's opinion. What is it that we want to do? What are our goals for our community? What are we trying to attract? So that way the private market doesn't come into the town suggesting something that's not going to be met with, welcoming arms. The other thing is we approve redevelopment agreements and construction plans with developers. That gives us a lot of opportunity and leverage to drive things and conditions that the village wants to see happen, but it has to be mutually agreed upon. We can't force certain things that are outside the scope of zoning and other laws that we set. What the village does not do, we don't set timetables for projects. We can't dictate when they will be done, how they're going to go about that. We don't control private sector financing as well. In fact, we don't want to be financing a project at all. We sometimes provide incentives, but we do not finance, loan money out, or pay for a project in totality. We also don't get to dictate who signs a lease and who gets rejected. And I think that's also a point of contention. We don't own property to lease it out, and we can't tell a shopping center person that they have to sign a lease to a certain business or not. They have the right to do that. As long as it's within our use standards, we can't tell someone that they have to sign a restaurant, they have to sign a grocery store. That's their right as a private owner to do that. The bottom line that I want to leave with is, while we're very aggressive on this, development is a private sector's job. And I think it's very dangerous when government crosses that line and thinks that they are a developer. We want to create an environment where we can have a win-win situation, where you have a developer that understands the community's needs, what their desires are, but they're putting their risk on the line, and it's not public dollars, the public that's putting themselves in a risky position. And so to update people on a couple of things that are going on, the village continues to move forward to understand the viability of the village-owned property at the corner of I-390 or the Elgin O'Hare and Roselle Road. We did consolidate the property, so we have more land contiguous there, which is helpful. And we did sign a letter of intent with a townhome developer. That developer continues to understand and go back to the table on a number of stormwater design options, and we're hopeful that they can submit plans for village review, which would then continue the process there. I think this is an important thing that we oftentimes want to make sure. If a development's coming in, density scares people. They think that means flooding, but we go through a number of rigorous engineering studies to make sure that it does not. And in fact, in most cases, we want it to improve drainage situations to make it less likely to flood for others. The other thing that's exciting is the Marathon gas station that's been long vacant and demolished is finally under contract. We have the Dunkin' Donuts on Irving Park is under contract and closed on the property. They're in the process of submitting plans to the village to have a drive-through location constructed there. This is something that will be a great asset, especially with Turner Park right across the street, but taking something that's been really an eyesore and really an ugly way to welcome yourself to Village Roselle is finally being resolved after decades of blight in that area. So sometimes it moves slowly, but when it moves, boy, does that feel good. Moving on to the Village Center, we know that there's been a couple of disappointing delays with the Firewater Barbecue, and I echo those disappointments myself in that regard. That's been something that, you know, it's really on the developer's end, and we continue to be in contact with them to make sure that we can continue to see what the village ideally would like to see there, which is a restaurant and an extra kind of space for lease. And so their timeline's been pushed back a year due to delays on their private end, but that's where the village continues to work with the private sector to make sure that we can be responsible about how we're approaching these things and get the best opportunity for the villages as possible. I hope that there'll be an update we can share with the community in the next couple of months. The other thing is the new library building on the old Trinity property site. We are continuing to move forward with the land swap deal there. The library is in the process of going out to bid for their construction project. Once they have that, we'll have a lot more knowns on the timetable, but we continue to work very closely with the library, and we're excited to see that happen. Something that's an exciting development that some may have seen at the end of the year or not was the board was able to actually close on the original library right at the corner of Main Street and Park Street. This has long been vacant for over a decade. It has a number of leaks. The property was not being maintained very well, and it's really a sad sight to see in an otherwise bustling and economically vibrant downtown area. And so by purchasing this property, it's going to allow us to combine it with the existing library's property and help us market that for broader redevelopment opportunities. And we're really excited to use this for mixed use and have more commercial property that can be utilized in downtown, because as we hear from a number of people, they're clamoring to come to our downtown. It's not for their lack of interest, it's a lack of space. And so by us owning this building, we can consolidate it together, but also we can make sure that we have some say in terms of what goes there. A good example of how we can kind of partner and make sure that we can incentivize the right kind of development for our community. And finally, we do have a number of unsolved cases that I think all bring us different levels of discomfort or despair. And just because there's no news does not mean the village is not actively working on these. And I want to air that very seriously to everyone. One that I hear about quite a bit, and it frustrates me often, is the vacant old Burger King on Lake Street. The last tenant closed in 2017, so almost 10 years ago. And there's been a number of near misses with other people looking at leasing the site, but I think there's a number of challenges that we encounter on this property. One, you've got a difficult property owner who wants what they want for the property. We cannot say what a reasonable lease is. We cannot say what the rent should be. And if someone doesn't want to rent the building out, they don't have to. And that is frustrating. It makes me mad, but that is the reality of it. The other thing is this property needs a number of investments. To put in a new water line, which would be needed for this building, they would need to get IDOT permission to cut into Lake Street in order to do that. The other thing that's challenging with the site, and many people don't probably realize this, it has no private entry to it. It needs a contract with the shopping center to the south, or to the north of it rather, to access the property itself. It has no driveway of its own to get there, and that creates a lot of issues or contention for a lot of potential developers who would be interested in that property. The other one is the Little Market on Irving Park Road. Little Market closed in April of 2022, and there's been a number of interested businesses in this location. I think there's not a month that goes by where there isn't someone who calls our office and says, you know, tell me about this property, tell me what's permitted there. What continues to be the issue is just getting a lease or a contract to sell the building with the current owner and anyone interested. This property also has some challenges in terms of investment. Depending on the use, they may need to have fire suppression systems installed. And again, that would require a new water line, which would mean they would have to work with IDOT to get a permit to cut into Irving Park Road in order to make that happen. So while properties remain vacant, that doesn't mean that the activity or the interest from us is not there. We're simply trying to work through the confines of what works and doesn't work in a development situation when we are the government. Now, another thing that comes up quite a bit is why is there no grocery store near downtown, or why can't Roselle gather a grocery store? And there's a number of reasons for that. I think one thing is, and we'll hear about it a little bit more during the comprehensive plan refresh potentially, is they need enough square footage for both parking and the building itself. And frankly, in our village, there's a lot of difficulty finding a big enough piece of land that can accommodate the size that they need for the store and the parking. And I know everyone's going to throw out, well, Trader Joe's doesn't need a lot of parking. Well, the fact of the matter is there's still not enough space for them to find the right configuration for everything without tearing down an entire building. And that's an expensive proposition when there's ample real estate across the suburbs. The other thing that's important is most grocery stores want to find an area where daily traffic car volume is between 25 to 30,000 cars a day. And to put that into perspective, Irving Park, which is arguably probably one of our busiest corridors, and especially in downtown Roselle, it only has 15,500 cars a day. Okay, that's about, we're short 10,000 cars a day on Irving Park Road. So I want to be very clear here. To attract a grocery store, we're talking about a massive change to our traffic patterns and how things are operating. And so we are aggressively talking to a number of grocery stores, but these are the challenges that we are confronting. And just because we don't talk about it, just because there's no, big announcements happening, I think these are the realities that we are confronting, and I want to be very transparent about that. But also understand we may need to change things pretty dramatically in order to attract a grocery store if we want to land one. The other thing that's really important is their distance and our market saturation. And I think I constantly bemoan the fact that we are trapped between Schaumburg and Bloomingdale. I don't know which one's Eagleton in this scenario. Maybe they both are. But I think constantly we're in a very congested area, the suburbs. It's great for access and accessibility. But when it comes down to choices in marketing Roselle, that centered on being downtown Roselle, you can see with the first, the red dot is a 1 mile radius, the yellow is a 3 mile radius, and then the green is a 5 mile radius. Within 5 miles, you have pretty much access to any brand you want, sometimes 2 brands of the same one in that same radius circle. And so Target, for one, is like 4. So we're kind of surrounded by Target. And so what that means, though, is we're looking at a very niche market of what we could attract. A lot of grocers like to be by other grocers, and you can see around the perimeter, they've kind of all parked outside of Roselle, for lack of better words. And so if we are to land something in the future, it's going to be something that's a bit more boutique. It's going to be something that's be a little bit more niche, because that's the market that we're going to be able to accommodate, because they're going to be looking for a little bit of a stretch. They're going to be trying to avoid higher real estate pricing in other communities. And so I think we need to set our eyes on what that could be. And I think we need to be realistic about that. And the thing is, when we've had things like the little market here that was a bit niche, the community doesn't always embrace that market, and it can sometimes suffer the business model itself. And so as we talk about a grocery store, it's not that it's something that we are not pursuing, because we are always sending out letters, we're always emailing, we're constantly contacting them. But I think we need to ground ourselves in the shared kind of feedback we get from those retailers and what we have to do to kind of market Roselle, and kind of think differently about how are we going to land that, if that's a big wish and a want for us as a community in that regard. Not a popular thing to talk about. Something that's maybe a little bit more popular right now that I'm excited to see moving on is the quiet zone. And a lot of times I hear, what's the status of it? And I think it's important to talk through where this has been. This has been something that the community has talked about since 2008. Those were the first debates the board had about a quiet zone. And they went on for a number of years before they took an action to establish one on Rodenberg Road, first and foremost. Now, this past November, the board agreed to design pedestrian roadway improvements to meet the required 24-hour zone safety requirements. This is something that we anticipate the design being completed this year, and would allow for construction to start as early as 2028. Now, because of the merger, Canadian Pacific Kansas City is required to fund the creation of Roselle's downtown quiet zone, but we are under a time clock to make that happen. The other thing that complicates things is Metra is a party to all this as well. So we are working with a corporate entity of a multi-billion-dollar business. We are dealing with Metra, which is a excruciatingly slow administrative headache. And Tiny Roselle is kind of stuck in the middle of this, but we are fighting dogmatically to make sure and holding all parties accountable, because we want to make sure that the whole downtown area has this addressed and resolved as soon as humanly possible. So while we talk about things, I think a theme out of everything is we announce things, it's exciting, it takes time. It sometimes takes years, and it frustrates me as well, but that means we're doing it correctly. That means we're designing it for the future, and we're making sure that we get this done the right way the first time instead of rushing through things. And so I will be thrilled when we can announce that in effect and done. But there's a lot of work between now and then to make sure that that's a reality. But we actually have hope on a downtown quiet zone. And that first time we can say that really in a long time. And I'm really, really grateful and excited that we can get to that point. And so as we look ahead to what this year brings for us, and what's going on in the village, I think it's important to kind of align on kind of what we're focusing on. And we're even thinking about next year's budget, frankly. And the fact of the matter is, all these things are great, but they're in a vacuum. And I think especially more than ever, a lot of things are going on in our country, economically, socially, and whatnot. And that changes the picture for how we need to operate our community in. And so one thing to keep in mind is when we talk about money, and it's an unpopular thing, but I want to lean into that conversation because it's an important one for us all to understand. One big thing this community and every community in the state of Illinois has been dealing with is a loss of funding from the state of Illinois. There's a portion of your property, or rather your income tax, that goes to municipalities. The state collects it and we get a share of that, and that helps fund a lot of our operations. Well, back in 2011, the state did a one-time deal to cut that back. And like anything else you can expect in this story, it never came back. So since 2011, from 2011 to 2022, Roselle is missing out on $14.7 million of revenue we otherwise would have received that would have gone to paying for pensions, paving our streets, taking care of infrastructure. And if you take that kind of money that could have been invested over those years, there's no wonder why we have such a backlog of projects we're trying to catch up on today and make sure that we're right-sized for the future. And I don't say that to bemoan it and to complain, but the reality is there's a lot of things that happen, they snowball, and we end up having, as the last unit of government here, have to deal with and confront how we deal with that. The other thing is there's just massive uncertainty around federal and state tax policies, and we don't know how that's going to impact the village. Last year, the state changed how sales tax receipts would be collected and whatnot, and it took us the whole year to kind of figure out, were we going to break even on that change or were we going to lose some revenue on that? The other thing is there's stabilization on the interest rates, but there's a slower rate of inflation, which means sales tax growth is kind of in jeopardy there. We don't understand or know. We're not going to pretend that we're economists that are going to be able to predict what the economy is going to do this year, but we're concerned about what that means in terms of our revenue projections and how we can continue to maintain a balanced budget. Because the last thing we want to do is be deficit spending as well. And I think the other important thing is Roselle is a bedroom community. And I think that's something that was at one point a dirty word. People didn't want to associate with it or embrace it. But the fact of the matter is 80% of our equalized assessed value, what we collect in property taxes, comes from residential. And that has big implications because residential, and our fire services speak to this really well, consume more services than they generate in tax revenue. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that you need to pay more to account for those services, but someone has to pay for those services. And as we continue to see escalated use of our services through our call volume with our fire department, through our social services referrals, we have to account for that in our budget and make sure that we are paying for that somehow. And so with that, we're at a point where we are going through our strategic plan process, and we want to make sure that we're getting a local snapshot to focus on our budget more as a board. And so we did have a huge win with the home rule, and we appreciate the community that came out and voted for it. Whether you voted for it or against it, we had a fantastic dialogue as a community. I think that's really important. And we're finally seeing a year later, after we collected some of that revenue for the first time, we're investing heavily in our community and putting it to infrastructure just like we talked about. The other thing that we now need to take into account is our costs of maintaining service levels when we have rising costs. Health insurance is going up exponentially every year. Our cost to purchase water from the city of Chicago is incredibly expensive every year. Our cost to replace vehicles, commodities, it is expensive to operate. And so I don't, again, say that to complain, but to be honest with you, to be transparent with you. The cost of giving you the same service you had last year versus this year is just more expensive. And so we need to understand through our lean staffing model, because we have not really, if you compare ourselves to other organizations in the suburbs, I'm proud of what we deliver to you versus how many people we have to do that for you behind the scenes. But with an increasing complexity of service, we have some capacity constraints. And so there'll be opportunities over the course of this year to give feedback to the board and understand what are those trade-offs and how do we want to move forward with that. And that's going to help the board set a new strategic plan and vision for how we want to go about planning the village for the 2027 budget and forward. So there's some difficult conversations we're going to have, but like anything else in Roselle, we're going to roll up our sleeves, we're going to do the work, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to find the solution for it. And so on that note, you know, we're excited to see you this year. We have a lot to be grateful for in our community. Every day I wake up and I get to talk to some incredible people, work with incredible people on the board, our staff. And so we're excited for it not to be single digits or, dare I say, negative numbers outside, and we can be together as a community gathering outside, enjoying the concerts, enjoying all that we have to offer, because that's what makes Roselle great, is our residents. And I think the important thing to end on here is, I know we're just in a really weird moment, I'm going to say right now. I think this weekend brought a lot of interesting things that kind of happen in the general context of our country. And so I think what I'm committed to in Roselle is that, you know, we have a moment here to be instruments of peace. And what I mean by that is, you know, where there's division, let us all just bring understanding. Where there's anger, let's bring patience to the table. When there's injury, let's bring repair. When there's doubt, let's bring clarity. When there's fear, let's bring courage. When there's darkness, let's bring light. When there's despair, let's bring hope. Let's listen before we lecture. Let's learn before we dismiss, and let's build before we blame. And so may our shared work together bind what's frayed right now, strengthen what's fragile, and remind us that this community is worth the effort. If we choose that posture, there's no challenge beyond our capacity, and there's no goal beyond our reach. So let's work together with steady hands and open hearts, and knowing that the future of Roselle is something we will build and not wish for. So thank you so much, and that's the state of the village for 2026. So from that, we get to go to the consent agenda. Not as exciting. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial in nature and will be enacted in one motion. There'll be no discussion of these items unless removed from the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda tonight? Record show none. Tonight we have presentation approval of the village board minutes of January 12th, 2026. Pass an ordinance amending chapter 10, article 9, section 1303 of the traffic code of ordinance of the village of Roselle comprehensive traffic code. And pass an ordinance amending chapter 10, article 11, section 103 of the village of Roselle comprehensive traffic code. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Madam Clerk, when you're ready, a roll call, please.
Aye.
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 That motion carries. We'll continue on to our development and engineering services. Trustee Forsythe.
Thank you, Mayor Pulaski. I would like to move to receive a presentation on the Town Center Area Plan update from Ginkgo Planning and Design.
So tonight we have Zorin from Ginkgo, who was the original consultant for our 2016 comprehensive plan. Over 2025, we met with a group of residents, business owners, and representatives from the park district and the library, as well as trustees and village staff, to kind of look at the town center area from the original 2016 comprehensive plan. And we have the draft plan here ready to be approved. And Zorin's gonna present everything that we've discussed and all the dreams she's come up with. So
And we packed the house for this, and a very important document, I will say, so not to say that in jest, but I think this is a happy happenstance of scheduling, so.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Farhad Zareen. I'm the principal of Ginkgo Planning and Design. It is such a pleasure to be back here to present tonight. Really hard act to follow, David. That was quite a wonderful speech. So if you go to the next slide, this is an update to the technical terms, section 3A of the comprehensive plan for the village of Roselle. For many of you who were part of the comprehensive plan, it is literally a plan that looks as much as we can comprehensively at the whole village. We were lucky to lead that effort in 2016, and we are very delighted to be back here tonight. And through the last 10 years, have had the opportunity to work with you guys on different projects. So the question is, why are we doing an update to the plan? Before I talk about that, I also wanted to thank the steering committee members who helped us through the last few months, really advising and guiding the plan, to all of you who came to the public forum and gave us feedback that we've tried to incorporate. And as always, it's always a pleasure to work with the Roselle community. So again, why are we doing this plan? Really kudos to your village board, to the community. In the last 10 years since the 2016 plan was approved, you guys have gone and implemented most of the catalytic projects that were recommended. And truly, we work across the region. I wish most of our clients were like you, but it's quite incredible that some of these are huge projects and you've completed or they're underway, and many of them they are touched on already. So to give you guys another pat on the back, I'll just walk them through really quickly. The first one is, if you go to the next slide, is, of course, Petal Plaza. I mean, in 2016, this, is a very small space, and we kind of thought this was a really worthwhile project to pursue, and it's just incredible to see how this transformation has become the heart of the community. And today we'll show you some greater opportunities that can expand on that. You have brought in over almost 400 units near the train station. And, if you think 2 people per unit, that's 600 new people coming to your town center, shopping here, eating at your restaurant. So that's incredible. And also it really builds up the density around the train station. The next one, the next 2 slides, the mayor touched on extensively. All the improvements to Irving Park Road that were really originally coming from the comp plan. And in the next slide, a critical component of the 2016 comp plan was this pedestrian bridge. I just want to remind everyone why this is so important. This is your connection, your pedestrian connection to the station area. And very few town centers have a train station right there, but because it's on the other side of Irving Park Road, the challenge was really getting pedestrians to move back and forth in a safe way. So this is a critical piece that will tie the 2 areas together. So with that background, for this one, we looked at, again, revisited kind of the bigger vision and goals. If you go to the next slide, here's a kind of a view of kind of the main things that this plan update talks about, and I'll go through all of those in detail. But the main one in the heart you see there is a village green. And we'll talk about it a bit more, but again, there's no new vision here. We're literally building on all the great things you've done, continuing to invest, bring new development in, bring more housing, bring opportunities for more stores. Again, in the next slide, you see the goals are pretty simple: pedestrian friendly, attractive, continue to create unique public open spaces, invest in bike paths, trails, and again, to do all of that to continue to bring more residents and shops and restaurants to the area. So as part of this update, the village really identified 4 areas. This was a much more focused project, again, given the fact that so much has been done, that can guide hopefully the next 5 to 10 years of investments. And I'll walk you through all these 4 areas in a greater detail. So the first one, of course, is the Village Hall area. If you go to the next slide. And if you go to the next slide, we'll show you, there's a lot of technical detail, but these are very specific plans like our 2016 plan. We are trying to, again, understand public investments and where development might come in. So we looked at all the parcels all around. And again, like a comprehensive plan, this doesn't mean that tomorrow, things are going to happen or things are going to get bulldozed or your property is going to change. A comprehensive plan is literally a guide that allows, as the mayor mentioned, a guide for your investments, a guide for development. So we looked at all the properties, and if you go to the next slide, with everything happening, as you know, once the library moves, you now have control over the library site. We looked at this as an amazing opportunity to create a half-acre village green. What you've been able to do with the small area with Petal Plaza, now you have an opportunity to create a true village green that's half-acre big. And again, we're showing just a lawn here. In the next phases, you will go and design it and create petal stuff. But right now, this is amazing that we can create this. It's a wonderful size without taking out the church, which is a wonderful community asset, or really impacting any of your existing buildings. In darker red, you see all the new possibilities for new mixed-use buildings with restaurants at the ground, shops at the ground, housing above, or multifamily units. Again, this plan does not prescribe any particular kind of development. It just says very clearly that you are open to all these different things that fit in nicely. If you go to the next slide, you see in 3D how that half-acre village green is such a huge piece in the puzzle, where now with the beautiful stage you've designed, you can have, events with people sitting on both sides and have a much bigger capacity for larger events. Go to the next slide. This is a boring diagram, but this is what comes out of all of this, that you can show the developers that if you assemble all these sites, these are significant sites that can bring in the right kind of development and continue to, make this part of town vibrant. The next area we looked at was around Lawrence Avenue. Now that Metro 19 is done and bringing so many people here, we wanted to look at some of the opportunities right next. And as you know, again, there's an active commercial area. No one's talking about, bulldozing them or anything. This is just looking at long-term, what are the possibilities if someone wanted to look at these sites. One of the opportunities here was with Lions Park. Lions Park is a great community asset, but is kind of strangely shaped. And we worked with the park district. They were part of the steering committee to understand, is there a way to reshape it without losing any park acreage? So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that without the park size stays the same, we are showing an option that you could have more commercial frontage along Irving Park, and the park could be more, towards the neighborhood that it's serving. Again, these are things to continue to look at in the future. And for this particular site, because the sites are pretty large, there are multiple options of how it could be built. So if you do look at the whole document, do look at the options, but the next one shows one possible, the next slide shows one possible option where, you could have simple commercial uses along the front, more restaurants, smaller niche groceries and things like that, have density in the back and potentially even something with a parking garage. Again, many, many ways to build that. But again, one simple principle, we're always going to have things facing the park, never turning our back to our streets or our parks so that they can be amenities to enjoy. Go to the next area. Again, you see a 3D view of that, how, again, with Metro 19 being quite an intense project, we, again, as the mayor said, don't control the market. With the massive amount of rental units that are coming here, again, to think that that could be another product over there that would fit. Again, we don't know if that comes, that's great. But again, we are trying to keep our options open and showing a variety of products. Go to the next area. This is the North Irving Park Road area. Smaller sites, but again, when we have a downtown that's vibrant like this, we look at every little infill opportunities. We have the bank here. Again, we are not touching the bank, but we are trying to see all around the bank, are there underutilized sites that long-term could have something better to do. So if you go to the next slide here, again, very simple, leaving the current bank parking, but just looking at, building where we have more multifamily, we have more row houses, building that, having more commercial uses along Irving Park Road, assembling some of these sites. Between the two, we have about 2 acres of sites that, local developer could come in. Again, baby steps, but this piece is kind of critical because it really becomes a terminus on Prospect Street that takes you back to Petal Plaza and the Village Hall area. Go to the next slide. Again, you see a 3D view. Again, these are what we call visualizations. There are a variety of options that the developers might come in and bring to you. The last one is the Maple Avenue area. This one's a bit different. This was not so much development driven, but more looking at framework opportunities. As you know, with the library moving there, and we have Parkside Park, which is a 6-acre park, huge amenity right in the heart of the town center, and new commercial coming up there. We saw Maple Avenue as a great opportunity for really some of the infrastructure investments that the mayor talked about. Again, if you look at the next slide here, this is building on studies the village has already done in terms of connecting a more connected, safe bike and pedestrian kind of system. But we feel that, if you look at that, there's the proposed bridge that's crossing Irving Park Road, and then you're on Main Street. So as we keep thinking about connecting the larger town center, we're trying to understand what are the streets, what are the connections that can make Maple Avenue a great corridor. And really a lot of people, whenever I come here, I drive on Maple, and how can that also feel like a gateway to your downtown? So there are some great recommendations here, and we hope in the future you will continue to work with the park district to improve a 6-acre park. And then finally, just a view of this as a 3D view, looking at, truly that pedestrian bridge, which I cannot personally so excited to see that happen, is a game changer for this area. So finally, I'm going to leave you with kind of the overall view. In 10 years, if all that gets done, you are really positioned as such a strong town center We do enormous work in Schaumburg. And, there's nothing like this in Schaumburg or many of the other suburbs. You have a true historic, charming, small-scale, pedestrian-friendly town center that I hope that you will continue to invest in. And with that big new Village Green, you're going to have so many events that everyone's going to be doing. So again, it was a pleasure working with you. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I know we're gonna do a public hearing, so if anyone has any questions, maybe we'll reserve that for the public hearing portion of that, piece. So I'll turn over to you, Dina.
All right, I would like to move to open the public hearing for an amendment to Section 3A of the 2016 Comprehensive Plan of the Village of Roselle titled Town Center Area Plan Update.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 All right, that motion carries.
Public notice has been served and it was published in the Daily Herald on January 9th, 2026. Notice is on file with the clerk. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak in favor of the petition?
Any members of the public wish to speak in favor?
Any members of the public who wish to speak against the petition? Are there any members of the public who wish to ask a question of the petitioner?
Any questions from the public? All right.
Does the village board have any questions or comments?
Any questions from the board or comments on it?
All right, then I would like to move to close the public hearing for the 2016 comprehensive plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
And lastly, I would like to move to pass an ordinance adopting the Village of Roselle, Illinois Town Center Area Plan Update to the 2016 comprehensive plan.
Any discussion? I just like to thank your work, Zorin, and the firm. It's been a fantastic relationship, and it's exciting when we get to come back and revisit things so quickly. I'd like to thank our Development and Engineering Services Department for all the help, and also our entire planning group. I know some of them are in the audience here today as well, but appreciate everyone's efforts and time. It does take a lot of time. We ask a lot of our volunteers, and so I think this is something that we can all be proud of, and will be a good guiding principle for us to hopefully prime the market. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Seeing no others, could we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 And that motion carries. That is it for Development Engineering Services. We have nothing under administration or fire, but police, Trustee Prokowski.
Notice a bunch of people leave when it's my turn. I would like to move adoption of a resolution authorizing the execution of an amended intergovernmental agreement with the DuPage Metropolitan Enforcement Group, also known as DUMEG.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 That motion carries.
That is all I have, Mayor Pileski.
Thank you so much. We'll continue on to, we have nothing under Public Works, but Finance, Trustee Lanisa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make a motion to approve the accounts payable list for January 26, 2026 in the amount of $3,104,334.06.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 That motion carries.
And secondly, I'd like to make a motion to pass an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2025 budget for the Tourism Fund, Rebuild Illinois Capital Funds, Capital Projects Fund, General Capital Projects Funds, TIF number 4, East Irving Park Road Fund, Water Sewer Extension Fund, Water Sewer Equipment Replacement Fund, and Parking Lot Capital Projects Fund.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 That motion carries.
That is all.
All right, thank you so much. We'll continue on with our new business items for discussion only. So, Chief, you're up. As I'm looking at the agenda, you got all three. So, we'll first have you discussing approving a memorandum of understanding between the Village of Roselle and Public Safety Cadets.
Yes, Mayor, Village Board. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. First item is looking for the board to approve a memo of understanding between the Village of Roselle and Public Safety Cadets. So the Public Safety Cadets is a nonprofit corporation. They were created in 2018 by active and retired law enforcement officers. Their goal is to prepare young people for a role in law enforcement. They grew very quickly. Since 2018, they're in over 400 agencies in 40 different states. In moving to the Public Safety Cadets, it will allow our cadets more access to training, resources, and education. It doesn't change the eligibility for the young people in this program. It's still 14 years of age to 20 years of age. One of the reasons besides what I mentioned, which is training, resources, and education, it's also much cheaper for our cadets. So currently, each cadet or each one of the kids in our Explorer post has to pay $62 per child. And then when we recently rechartered, it costs us $782. So the Public Safety Cadets gives us a lot more resources and access to training, but it's only $25 to register the post, and it's only $20 per kid per year. So we get, way more out of the organization. We currently have 10 kids that would benefit from this program. And so we think it would be a great idea to move in this direction.
Great. Any comments or questions from the board?
Only $250.
Only $250, but no $250 is too little for us to discuss. Consensus to move forward as recommended by the chief?
Nope.
All right, you have unanimous consent on that one. Let's go on to talk about your memorandum of understanding between the Village of Roselle Police Department, and the Board of Education of Lake Park High School, District 108.
Okay, so in August of last year, the governor signed a bill into law which prohibited law enforcement officers from issuing tickets and citations to students on school grounds during the school day. And in the memo that I submitted, so these are tickets that are written for violating school rules or local municipal ordinances and then use a school-based disciplinary consequence. So that's just a bunch of words to say that generally if you find a kid with a vape inside a bathroom, or there's a pushing shoving match in the lunchroom, what would happen before is the school would turn them over to the SRO would write them a ticket, they would come here and they would go to adjudication, and then they would get a fine. Now, the way that we did it, the parents would always be allowed to elect to do community service of some sort, but that didn't happen throughout the state. Oftentimes, it was a burden on the communities that had to pay these fines, so they changed the law. But the law says that we, the village, and all police departments have to sign a memo of understanding with their district that has SROs that says that we won't do that. We won't write those tickets. We were way ahead of the game. We already had MOUs with District 108, as I noted here. So what we did is, of the 3 MOUs, we combined the body worn camera MOU and then the duties and responsibilities of the SRO MOU. We put them together, and then we added that piece that we won't write tickets on school grounds as a way to discipline kids. We sent it to our council. Lake Park sent it to their council, and it doesn't change anything except that piece. So I'm just looking for permission to move forward.
Questions or comments from the board? Consensus to move forward as directed?
Yep.
All right. You have unanimous consent on that one as well.
Okay.
2-0. Let's see. It'd be a perfect score night for you.
Don't jinx me. So then this one here, bringing before the board, we had a resident that lived on Woodfield Trail bring a concern to DES and the police department, and said that specifically on Woodfield Trail during pickup and drop off for Nergy School, she felt it was a little bit unsafe because of the parking setup. You have cars that were parked on both the east and west side of the street, and she asked us to look into it. So we worked with DES, and as you can see in the board packet, for existing on Woodfield Trail, so that basically runs north-south, there was kind of on the west side of the street, so on the left side of that map, it was kind of a mishmash of parking. You know, there was a section that was no parking and stopping, standing at any time. And then there was a section that said, you know, there was standard overnight. And then there was a section that said, hey, during school hours, you can't park here. So in looking at it, to make the whole area safer, we worked with DES, and then what we proposed, if you look at the other side of the map, is on the west side of Woodfield Trail, just to make no parking, stopping, or standing at any time from Nergy Road all the way to Jennifer. That opens up the sight lines, allows it to be more safe or safer for people who are crossing the street at those crosswalks, which we currently have, so that they can see both ways. It also doesn't necessarily affect people dropping off and picking up, because there's plenty of parking on the east side of the street for people to park and then get out on the passenger side of the vehicle and then use the crosswalks. So we were just looking at getting an approval to go ahead and move forward with changing the ordinance on Woodfield Trail.
Comments or questions from the board? Trustee Domke?
You sure have experience working with schools, don't you?
Yeah, I've done that quite a bit.
And you also have experience in monitoring how it works, so they tweak it if you have to, right?
Correct.
Oh, I mean, me, I think you're well versed in doing this. I don't really dig everything you said, but it looks feasible to me.
Thank you, sir.
Other comments or questions from the board? Consensus move forward as proposed? Right,
Yeah.
consensus on that. I just appreciate the attention. I know oftentimes there's a lot of questions we get from residents, and sometimes we can make a change. Sometimes the policy is there for a reason, but I think this is a good example of it's always good to take a second look, and I appreciate that, you know, we do take our residents' comments seriously. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, that concludes new business. We do have a second opportunity for village board public comment. So is there any member of the public that wishes to address the board at this time? The record show none. Is there any other business for discussion amongst the board? All right, seeing none, then is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Meeting is adjourned at 8:11. Thank you so much, everyone. Have